So I've been a delivery driver for about 3 years, ever since the start of the pandemic. It's a lot more stressful than people think, and I've dealt with several different customers, but this one takes the prize. It was a Thursday, and I had been doing Uber Eats orders for people who just preferred to stay home. Most of the time I do orders until really late in order to keep the cash flowing. Since this was around the time where these delivery apps really started to take off, I took advantage of it and worked both Uber Eats and DoorDash. On this particular day, I had been using Uber Eats. Not before long, I had received one order from a house that wasn't too far away, and the order was pretty big, which basically meant an extra tip. I had arrived to the given restaurant, obtained the order, and arrived the 10-minute drive to the given address. On this day, it happened to be raining, and one thing I've always hated was driving in the rain, but I had to make my money somehow. It's about 4 in the afternoon, and as I'm driving, I turn into the road where the house was. Now, in order to get to this house, you'd have to go down this narrow pathway that cuts straight into a wooded area. To say the least, it was pretty much a well-hidden path unless you accidentally stumbled upon it or knew where you were going. I pull onto this dirt road, driving as slowly as I can, and pull up to a small one-storied house. At the front of this house was a man sitting in his rocking chair, listening to the rain. I get out of my car and he gets up to come help me with the food. At first, he genuinely seemed like a man. A pleasant guy. He looked like your typical redneck, but he was respectful and apologized for the confusion of his location. I had said that it wasn't a problem and to have a nice day. Before I was about to get back in my car, he then asked if I wanted to come inside to try some pastries he had made earlier. I politely declined and tell him I had to get back to doing orders. However, he didn't even seem to acknowledge my response and simply insisted that I'd go inside with him. Once again, I declined, telling him I was sorry and that I'm sure they were good. No matter how many times I said no, he'd always make attempts for me to agree, even going as far as raising my tip. This time, I was visibly annoyed, but still kept my composure while giving him a firm no. I then take out my phone pretending I was on a phone call with another customer. This thankfully made him stop asking me, causing him to go inside with his food. When he did, I hopped back into my car, started my engine, and sped off. As I'm driving back down this narrow road, I then see him speed walking after my car for my rear view mirror. Now, if the story had ended there, it wouldn't be scary, but this story comes with a very unsettling twist. That night when I had gotten home, my girlfriend and I had sat down on the couch watching the news. At one point, there was a chilling news report about a man in the area attempting to lure kids into his truck. As much as I hate to say it, we lived in an area that wasn't so great, so stuff like this did happen occasionally. But when this news report showed the person responsible, I almost spit out the water I was drinking. On my TV was the same man I had taken the delivery order from, causing me to go absolutely hysterical. He had the same face, same beard, and the same hair. I just knew it was him. Turns out, he was arrested shortly after I had delivered his food. After all, I knew there was something off about that man. And boy, did I end up being correct? For a little bit of context, this happened on July 4th of 2019. I had just started doing both Uber and Lyft as a side hustle to make some extra money for my boyfriend and I. It wasn't the best paying job, but flexibility was through the roof and you didn't have people telling you what to do. It's a chill and steady job, but you always had to stay on top of what you were doing. Anyway, it was the 4th of July and I decided to do some Ubering as I knew there would be a lot of people out. Every 4th of July, my city hosts this annual music festival where thousands of people attend, so I was guaranteed to get a few people. Almost immediately, I kept getting requests left and right as people exited the venue. I decided to choose one, and within a few minutes I see a man walk up to my car. He asked if I was his Uber, to which I replied with a yes. He gets in the back seat, and right away, the strong smell of marijuana hit me like a brick. However, I knew that he had just come from the festival where smoking was bound to happen, so I wasn't complaining. Throughout the ride, this guy just stared intently at me as if he were watching my every move. I'll be honest, it kind of made me uncomfortable, and I just wanted to get this ride over with. At one point, he stopped staring at me and gets out his phone to call someone. I just tried to focus on driving, and his destination was only 10 minutes away, which was a relief in my book. As I'm driving, I hear him in the back speaking French. Now, my aunt is French, so while I understand a fair bit of French, I don't speak it. So, I hear him talking, but I don't pay attention as it's rude to eat these drop on people's conversations. That was until he said something along the lines of, "This girl I'm riding with." I felt my blood run cold as he said this, but tried to make it seem like I didn't understand him. What he was saying was unnerving. To sum it all up, he was basically saying after I had dropped him off, he was planning on, quote, snatching me up. I knew exactly what that meant, and his stop was only 5 minutes away, so I didn't have much time. I'm a 5'3" petite girl that weighs about 150 pounds. This guy was at least over 6 feet and was muscular, so there was no way I could resist him even if I tried. With very little time to spare, I get out my phone to call my boyfriend. My actual plan was to cause a scene and make up an excuse to leave. As I'm driving, I call him and ask what was up, where I immediately say, "Wait, what? She's bleeding on the floor? Tell her to stay calm, I'm coming." All the while, my boyfriend is completely confused, asking what I was talking about, etc. Thankfully, I used to be in acting school, so I was used to faking a good scene. At that point, I hung up, turned to the man, and said in a worried tone, "Sir, my grandma just hurt herself, I have to go, I'm just gonna drop you off here." I floored it down the road before calling my boyfriend back and apologizing, telling him everything. I ended up reporting the man to Uber, but I'm not sure if they investigated it as of yet. Thank you to my boyfriend for picking up, and thank you to my aunt for teaching me French. My name is Sarah, and this happened to me a few years ago when I was a sophomore in college. I attended school in one of the most quiet and safest cities in the country. The people were nice, the crime was low, and sirens would almost never be heard. Because of this, I never really had any unsettling encounters. However, little did I know that would all change in just one night. It was late November of 2021, and my friends and I had decided to go out to a bar to celebrate getting through finals. While the city did have low crime, it was also known to have a lot of bars and pubs. This resulted in a lot of bar fights where cops would be called. Anyway, my friends and I are at the bar taking shots and having a blast. The feeling of relief you get when finishing finals was amazing. At around 1 a.m., I told my friends that I had to go as I had to finish packing to fly back home the next day. However, they wanted to stay behind and finish their drinks, so I said my proper goodbyes and stumbled out of the bar. Because I was nearly drunk at this point, I went on my phone and decided to order an Uber back to my dorm. Thankfully, one accepted my ride request almost immediately, which wasn't common seeing that it was late. I sit down on the outside bench when I see a car pull up and someone waving their arm out. Even in my drunken state, I assumed that this had to be my Uber, even though the app showed he was still 4 minutes away. I brush it off, assuming it was a glitch in the app, and got into the car. The very second I get into the car, I immediately noticed the red flags. For one, he didn't even say my name, and two, he never greeted me. but it was a good day. Late and I was simply too tired to care and just told him my address. As I'm in the car, I also noticed that he never put the address into his GPS, which I found odd. Figuring he must have known the area well, I let him do his thing while I just kinda kept to myself. I try asking him questions to make small talk, but he just replied with one-word answers. It eventually came to a point where I didn't even bother talking to him anymore. At one point, I look out the window and realize he was going in the complete opposite direction of my campus. I see him glance at the rearview mirror while giving me a nod as if he had acknowledged or understood me. However, he didn't turn around and just kept driving until he eventually pulled over beside an old office building. That was when I slowly came back to reality and knew what was going on when I started panicking. The fake Uber driver gets out and tells me to stay put while he goes around the building. I have no idea who or what he was going to get, but whatever it was definitely wasn't good. I grab my cell phone and see that I had several missed calls and messages from the real Uber driver. I knew I didn't have a lot of time, so I slowly opened the door and started running while trying to keep my balance. There weren't many people in this part of the city, so I ran into a nearby shop that was still open where I called the cops. I'd say within a few minutes, 2 police cruisers pulled up to the office building, but the car that was there was gone. They questioned me and made sure I described the car's description in perfect detail. I'm still unsure if they ever found the car or not, but I'd like to think that they did. A month after this incident, I saw a chilling news report about a couple who had gone missing getting into a car they thought was their Uber. The boyfriend's body was found 20+ miles away. The girlfriend survived even after suffering from severe bruises. The news said it was someone they apparently knew, but I've always wondered about that. As of now, the car has never officially been found and the driver has never been identified.